Welcome back, Mando.
Oh. Greetings, Bucketheads. Mevar Tagar. Welcome to our 312th amazingly awesome Andor episode of Mandovision. I'm your host, Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small independent Star Wars podcast. We are so glad you're here. You can follow us on the socials, Mando_Vision on Twitter /X and Insta. Mandovision at Blue Sky, and you can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. Alright, Bucketheads, we are back. It is week 4 of Andor. That means the final 3 episodes of Season 2 and the final 3 episodes, period, of this series are out now, wrapping up what I think has been one of the most epic Star Wars adventures we've gotten ever. Andor, in my opinion, is a vastly impressive series, and we are lucky to have it as something that we can now revisit on our Disney Plus whenever we choose to. And maybe they'll put this one out on DVD too. We'll see what happens with that process if it moves forward. But yes, the conclusion, the epic, staggering, mind-blowing conclusion. Well, mind-blowing. Again, we know where everything's headed, but seeing where our characters end up, seeing how some of them get to where they're going, seeing how the steps they take on their journey. Interesting stuff. A lot of really interesting revelations in these 3 episodes. A lot of insane action, insane tension, just like the series has always delivered. So we're gonna dive into it, and again, remember these are sort of more reaction-based episodes than what I normally do, where we sort of are able to dive a little bit more deeply into the content of the show, and we will do that on an individual episode basis for Andor soon. We will get to that, but we want to, in order to cover the show as fast as we can, as quickly as we can. We have to do it now. My schedule is what it is. And so we roll. This is how we roll, friends. So let's give credit where credit is due to our creators for these 3 episodes. This arc of Andor, Season 2, Episodes 10, 11, and 12, written by Tom Bissell, directed by Alonso Ruiz Palacios, and I think they do a phenomenal job. Episode 10 is titled Make It Stop. Episode 11, Who Else Knows? And Episode 12, Jedha, Kyber, Urso, setting the table for our connection to Rogue One. All right, let me go ahead and give you my fun and furious-filled reactions to these 3 episodes. You know what that means, friends. It's time. Strap on your buckets and let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off. You're going to have to relocate the covert. This is the way. This is the way.
So here we are, 1 year forward in our timeline to the days just prior to the events of Rogue One. Everything coming to a head very, very quickly. These 3 episodes, very tightly packed, tension-filled, and insanely written and plotted and detailed. Just really, really fascinating stuff. And I think one of the things about this episode, Make It Stop, is so powerful, is the fact that finally, now, here at the end, we are getting the background on 2 characters who I think we've been insanely fascinated by since the jump of this show, since the first episode. We're digging into some of the backstory and history between Luthen and Clea, and gosh darn it, it was worth the wait. These episodes were this episode in particular, spectacular. The way this relationship, the way we see it formed, the way we see it fleshed out, the sort of the very nature of the relationship and the complexity that this relationship shows. It's non-traditional, and it's not like Luthen steps in as some sort of surrogate father figure. That would be so completely out of character. But we'll talk about that as we kind of get into it. But the crux of this episode, I mean, sort of like the main emphasis here of the episode is that the walls are closing in around Luthen and Clea after the events of Gorman. It would seem that Dedra Meero has begun kind of inserting herself where she doesn't belong and trying to resume her previous investigation for access, which at this point had been passed off to Supervisor Hertz. But she doesn't really like the way he's progressing with things. And I think Dedra wants a win that she can feel good about after Gorman. So she's overstepping her bounds, as Partagaz has said in this episode. At least I think it was Partagaz. Maybe it was Hertz himself who said it. But the walls are closing in. Lonnie has reached out. He's rung the big bell, as they say in the episode. And so Clea and Luthen have to see what their embedded ISB agent has for them. And they are suspicious of the trap. I think they can kind of feel the walls closing in around them. I think they know that to an extent, their days are numbered. As the rebellion now has grown, as Mothma has left the Senate and sort of given legitimacy to the Rebel Alliance, the days of these sort of smaller cells and factions like Luthen's, like Saw Gerrera's, those days are coming to an end because the war is just that big. And this is something that Cassian realized 2 years prior, why he left Luthen to join the rebels on Yavin. And so I think they felt this time coming for a while. But they're still in the game. They're still doing what they can for as long as they can. Again, Luthen and Clea have been tracking things down. They know that everything that they've been on is sort of leading to something. Gorman, what's going on in Jeddah, all these things, like there's a reason, there's something behind it all. Obviously, we as the audience know what it is, but how does the Rebel Alliance find out about these things? These are the questions that we're getting answers to in these episodes. And so Lonnie rings the big bell and is rather surprised when Luthen does indeed show up. And it's not below ground, it's not deep in the sublevels of Coruscant this time. It's on the surface. It's in plain sight. It's in a park. So Luthen maintains his disguise as the Antiquities man. He's got his wig on, his rings on, and he meets Lonnie, who tells him that it's over. He needs to be extracted. He needs his wife and daughter extracted from Coruscant. This was a deal that they brokered years ago when Lonnie was first turned in mole for Luthen. And Luthen is trying to figure out what exactly is going on. He wants the information first. He wants to know what Lonnie's trying to bargain with. And Lonnie has a lot. Lonnie has a lot of information. It has to do with Dedra Meero picking up the investigation and seemingly being prepared to raid Luthen's antiquity shop. But not only that, Lonnie, unbeknownst to Luthen, also had her codes and was able to access her servers, her private information. And when he did that, he said he had a 2-hour window, and he decided to act. And he did. And what he found was the beginnings of the crumbs that will lead us to the revelation of the Death Star. He knows about a weapon. He knows that Gorman and Jeddah and a guy named Urso, all these things are part of a secret weapon that's being built by Orson Krennic under the guise of the Emperor's unlimited power program that's been long in development and talked about throughout the series. So Luthen takes that information. Luthen kills Lonnie. There will be no extraction to Yavin. And goes back to Clea with the information. And if he were dubious of Lonnie and the aspect that Dedra was closing in, all that comes to a head pretty quickly. But I think Luthen does believe it. I think he knows things are coming to a head, and I think he knows that he can only fight the fight for so long, and that this may be it. So he gives the information to Clea, Jeddah, Edu, Urso, Kyber, all these short bursts of information. He's trying to pass them on to her in a way that she can remember, so that she can relay it to the Rebel Alliance, to Mon Mothma on Yavin. And again, she doesn't want to go. This is when we begin to get our flashbacks. Well, maybe not quite at this point, but we start to flashback and see their relationship throughout this episode, and it really does a number on how we perceive these two characters. And I absolutely love it. It's completely fantastic, and we'll talk more about that. I kind of want to put a pin in it for now, and we'll address them a little bit separately, because so much. I want to stay in the now, right? Because Luthen wants to go burn the shop down. He wants to be the one to put an end to everything. And as he's in the shop doing these things, what Lonnie said comes true, and Dedra shows up, and they have a fun little repartee back and forth, antiquities, blah, 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 what's real, what's not. It's really good dialogue. It's really fun back and forth between the two. But what's fun about it, in a sense, is that Dedra the entire time believes she has the upper hand, and the sort of gloating self-satisfaction that she takes, and that she has access. She has Luthen right where she wants him. The revelation of the Starpath unit is meant to be like this, like, I have you, I've won, I'm good at my job, validation is coming my way. But Luthen, we know Luthen at this point, and he's going to die for the cause. He's not going in alive. And so he stabs himself with a Nautolan, what's the name of that knife? A Nautolan bleeder, 60 centuries old, allegedly. So Dedra is rather surprised to see such a move, which, again, just tells you she does not know our guy Luthen Rael at all. I think she thinks the antiquities thing might be like who he really is, instead of the more cutthroat version that we are all familiar with. But she rushes in to save his life. They're taking over a floor of the hospital. Right now, machines are keeping Luthen alive. And this moment of self-satisfaction, of gloating, of victory, of winning, very quickly goes away. And Dedra finds herself in a position now where she thought she could swoop in, get this win, and get some glory at the ISB while Hertz is on his day off. Hertz finds out, comes back, is not amused. Partagaz not amused by the mess that Dedra's made of things. And again, they're willing to hang Dedra out, and Hertz is trying to step in to kind of realign everything. But Clea witnessed Luthen being taken out on a stretcher, which, by the way, I don't know why, but I'm completely fascinated with like the stretcher droids. There's something about them. I just thought that was such a cool visual. I don't know why. But yeah, Clea's not going anywhere. The information that Luthen passed on to her, she now has a mission, and it's to make sure that Luthen is not taken in alive, that Luthen does not live to be interrogated, and she is going to execute it to the fullest. One of the reasons why I love the episode so much is because, again, last week was like big, epic, political, genocidal action and political mayhem, and all the things that make Star Wars so great. This episode is what, to me, makes Andor so great, is the sort of smaller spycraft level stuff that they're doing in the show, in the season, and throughout the seasons, basically. But Clea as like this ultimate operative, Clea, excuse me, I keep saying Clea, I mean Clea. Clea as like this super operative, infiltrating the hospital, disguising herself as a nurse, avoiding cameras, then blasting away stormtroopers and these ISB armored agents. It's completely awesome. It's so good. then we get to the moment where Clea's gonna basically just pull the plug on Luthen's machines that are keeping him alive and see him die. And we see this sort of conflict in her face. And it's because of these flashbacks that we got throughout the episode of when they first met. Luthen as a younger man, as a soldier, Clea as a small child hiding aboard his ship, and we get the impression that whatever kind of military unit Luthen is part of, they're doing something horrible, and they're killing probably innocent people, and that seems to be weighing on Luthen already, and they are seemingly the people who kill Clea's parents, and yet Luthen offers an olive branch to the child. He offers his hand. He doesn't want to be a part of this anymore. He's going to take the child. They're going to leave. But it doesn't become like what we have seen from so many other of franchises or stories or sagas or anything like that. It's not a father-daughter relationship. It's more of a partnership. And Luthen has like the skills to be a very valuable asset, and he's trying to impart his knowledge onto Clea, who very clearly wants to be the agitator, who very clearly wants to fight the Empire, who wants to fight tyranny and oppression and all these things. And so as we progress through the flashbacks, through different points of their relationship, we find out how strong a person she is and how much of this rebellion she is driving. Luthen may be the figurehead. He's not even a figurehead. He's an active part. Let's not dilute Luthen's role in this here too. But Clea is the sort of background person, but she's really driving the ship in a lot of aspects of this. Like, she is the one who sort of pushes him into the fight, because it seems like for a while he's willing to. I shouldn't say willing to, but he understands that to build something, they have to take a lot of losses first. And these are the sort of lessons he has to impart on to her. And if they're going to get anything building, it's going to require losses, and maybe a small win here and there. But there's going to be a lot of losses on the way to gaining what they ultimately want. It's a fascinating relationship that the two have. It's more of a partnership than it is anything else. And I think they both believe that it's ultimately a partnership of self-destruction, because their goals, they have nothing after their goals other than to end the Empire. It's completely fascinating. I love it so much. And as the episode closes out, Clea's pulled the plug on Luthen. Her plot to distract the Empire, to infiltrate the room, executed. Chef's kiss to it. Again, she's conflicted because we know Luthen's people were part of whatever kind of atrocity was committed against her family. So she probably has like a bit of a love-hate relationship with this man, but he's taught her so much. He's imparted so much. He's helped her fight the Empire, helped teach her how to fight the Empire. And so when she kills him, when she pulls the plug on him, there is, I think, great emotional conflict in her. And it's a very somber way to kick off the first of these 3 episodes. So, episode 10, no sightings of Andor or any of our other characters. Were exclusively on Coruscant, focusing on Luthen versus the ISB. Luthen and Clea versus the ISB. Next episode, episode 11, we expand things. Clea has managed to make it out of the hospital, but she's on the run. She's holed up in the safe house we've seen so much of throughout this season, and she's chipping away at a wall. And why is she chipping away at a wall? To find another pulse transmitter radio. And she begins to send a signal out, and it's received by Willman on Yavin. It takes a minute, but they eventually find it. And while we're on Yavin, we catch up to Cassian for the first time since Bix has left, and now we find out that K2 and Melshi are living in the wooden hut house with Cassian. It's got a very bastard pad vibe to it. They're playing not quite cards, but they're playing games, playing some like domino looking game, and drinking a lot and having a good rousing boys' night, if you will. It's cute. It's fun to see the way Melshi and Cassian are teasing K2 and the way K2 verbally spars with them as well. It's, again, we fast forwarded a year, so we don't quite know the depths of Cassian and K2's exploits to this point. And I have to admit, after last week's arc, I did go back and reread the Cassian K2 origin story that was given to them in the Marvel Comics one shot written by Drew Straczynski, and part of me liked it better than what they did on the Andor series, because part of me thought it was odd that in the middle of the Gorman massacre, Cassian decided he wanted to take a KX unit home with him. But as I sort of sat with that for a little bit longer, I just kind of grew to just have it be okay with me. And hey, at least we have K2SO back in the show, and that's what I'm really excited about. So, again, I do recommend reading that Cassian and K2 comic that is out there. It's a one-shot. I think it might be listed as a Star Wars annual. Don't quite remember for sure, but check it out. You can compare and contrast and see what K2's origins you like better. But yes, catching up with him on Andor was very, very interesting. Willman brings them the receiver, and they find out they're getting a signal. It's like the final signal. This is like something they've been trained for since they were working with Luthen. Like, this was an emergency, all hands on deck kind of signal. And Draven and the rest of the Rebel Alliance staff is not too stoked on the idea that Cassian just rushes off to aid Luthen whenever Luthen calls. And Willman brings up a really good point to Draven, like, hey, none of this is here without the things that Luthen put in motion. And that maybe people need to start remembering that. And it's an interesting fact, because maybe not in this episode, but definitely by next episode, when we see them, oh gosh, I can't even remember if it is next episode. It might be in this episode that we have the conversation between Mon and Bail and the hologram of Saw Gerrera on Jedha. And we just see, we saw it last season, but we really see how different Luthen and Saw are from each other now. And while they're not part of the Rebel Alliance official, Luthen has definitely done more to aid the cause than Saw has. I think that's fair to say at this point. So Cassian, K2, Melshi, they rush off to aid Clea in her escape from Coruscant. Now, I don't think Clea is exactly intending to escape necessarily. I think she wants to impart information and then kind of like die like Luthen did, because she can't envision having another role outside of what she has now. And now that Luthen's gone, she seems to be a little bit off her game. It's the closest we've seen her to kind of cracking and being frustrated and sort of losing that singularity of mind, because I don't think she knows quite how to fight in this fashion for survival necessarily. It was easier when she was in the shadows and operating in darkness, just moving about as Luthen's assistant, unnoticed and unseen. Again, that spycraft element that's so fun in the series. But what else is going on in this episode is the fall of Dedra Meero. As the title of this episode indicates, again, it's who else knows. Word's getting out. People, the rumors, the whispers. And we find Dedra in an interrogation chamber, and director Orson Krennic coming in to find out how this leak began. And Dedra is right at the front of it. And it's a chilling sequence. I found it completely riveting, watching these two actors go at it, and seeing Ben Mendelsohn just really turn in a over-the-top maniacal performance here. We find out that Dedra received the wrong information packets at some point. They were brought to her desk, and she didn't point out the oversight. No, no, no. And as Krennic calls her later on, she's a scavenger, and she's looking for information. She's trying to get back onto the access desk. She wants to get back to what she was looking for initially. And in doing so, she does find something in those reports, but at the same time, she stumbled across something. And Krennic getting her to say the word Death Star is just chilling. Just chilling. And then it goes on. She's making excuses of how she's trying to do her job, but she can't do her job because of all these different levels of bureaucracy that are in her way, which is hilarious. And again, it's this bureaucratic oversight that probably finds this information packet making its way to her in the first place. Now, initially, I thought this was a very strange way for the leaks to begin. But it does make a certain amount of sense that in a bureaucracy this big, with this many levels, with this much red tape, that something so important could end up on the desk of someone almost unrelated to what's going on. And we've seen evidence of this in real life recently, which is terrifying to think about because this show was filmed quite some time ago. So it's sort of mind-boggling in a sense. And then, of course, it makes sense as we find out from in the last episode that Lonnie had access to Dedra stuff, which Krennic is aware of, but Dedra didn't seem to know. So again, it's a fun back and forth between the two. And when Krennic puts his finger on the top of her head, might be one of the most just like, you are so small to me moments. I had to pause the TV for a second because it just was like, what did he just do? Just how could you make another person feel so little? Just put your finger on the top of their head and remind them of how small they are compared to you. That's what Krennic just did. and again, it's a great back and forth between the two. And then the closing moments as he puts his gloved hands on her cheeks and says something along the lines of like, we will somehow go on without you. Don't worry. We got this. And walks out the room is just utterly chilling, utterly fantastic. So great. Love the sequence. And this is basically the end of Dedra's career. She didn't stay in her lane. She overstepped, as we heard in previous remarks about her. But now she's overstepped way too far. She went into Krennic's land, and now the whispers have begun about the Death Star. And that is the one thing that he, up to this point, had control over. And so now he has to get the rest of the ISB to help him lock down these leaks. The leaks that we heard so much about in Rogue One. This is the start of those leaks. Lonnie was the start of those leaks. And so it's fascinating to kind of get more context for what's in that film through the show. And show us sort of like the chain of events that really lead up to what's in the film, what's in the movie. It's really great stuff. We go back to Cassian and Melshi arriving on Coruscant, finding the complex where Clay is hiding out. Again, not finding, because Cassian knows where she's at. He's been there. He lived there. But what's fun to watch is the ISB's reaction. Supervisor Hertz has taken control of things. He's figuring things out. But he goes to Dedra, and he's like, listen, maybe I can help you a little bit if you help me right now. How do you think these people are pulling things off? And she mentions the old comm systems that they found on Ferrix, the pulse comms that they used to use on Ferrix. And so that's what Hertz begins to use to track them down, begins to locate them. But the Empire, being the Empire, they have gone too far. As opposed, they want to put out this kind of like APB thing out on Clea, but instead of saying that she's wanted for treason or something along those lines, they're like, oh hey, no, like she's a plague victim and she's spreading some kind of crazy disease around. So actually, the Empire's diverting a massive amount of resources to finding this person, and so that once they actually locate her, the ISB only has a small regiment available to them of their own guard, which is like the mishmashed sort of stormtrooper armor on these helmetless agents. which I thought was really neat visually. That the ISB sort of has their own kind of I don't know if military is the right word I want to use, but like these sort of agents, armored agents that go about and do their thing, helmetless, not stormtroopers, so that it sort of is a separate entity from the Imperial military. I thought that was very, very interesting, and we'll have to explore that a little bit more if we dive deeper into these episodes down the road. But yes, the tension builds as the hunt for Clea escalates and the Empire closes in around her. And they close in around her right after Cassian and Melshi make their way into the building. And they cut off communications. They seem to be doing things by the book so that no one can radio in or out from this area where they're going to find their suspect. But unbeknownst to them, and by them I mean Cassian and Melshi, they don't know the comms are out. They think they're talking to K2. K2 is the one who realizes the comms are out. And this is the beginning of a great cliffhanger for the end of the episode, of K2 doing K2SO things in a way that we haven't quite seen before, of him just dispatching Imperial agents. But again, the ISB agents who've already made it into the area, into the chamber, closing in on our heroes, and that's where we fade out for this episode. And as the episode closes out, just a reminder that, again, Clea doesn't want to go to Yavin. She doesn't like how they talk about Luthen and what they think of Luthen, and by extension, her. So she doesn't seem to be willing to leave. So that's why she wants Cassian to remember, all the information she's trying to give him. Kyber crystals, Jedha, Edu, Scarif, all the words, Urso, all the things, all the little bits of information that we need for what's to come. But the great cliffhanger, again, as K2SO closes in, the ISB closing in on Cassian and Melshi and Clea, great cliffhanger. Again, the tension mounting so succinctly in this episode. Draws it out to a really, really nice end. And then we get to the third episode of our arc, which is Jedha, Kyber, Urso. And we pick up basically where we left off with Clea, Cassian, and Melshi sort of lamenting, Clea lamenting having to leave. Not sure if this is a good idea for her. Not sure if she'll be safe on Yavin. But Cassian saying he's not leaving without her. And if they get ready to leave the safe house, Melshi goes out first, right into the bright shining lights of the ISB agents who tell him to stop, raise his hands, don't move. Of course, he does neither, and he moves and he dives back in. And a stun grenade goes off, the firefight begins, and it's fantastic. But it does come to a rather abrupt ending. But not before we cut back to the ISB, who's like, wait, why have we lost comms? What's going on here? Oh yeah, that's because our good friend K2SO has completely wreaked havoc on the ISB team that was on the ground, monitoring communications and relaying things back to headquarters. And now he is in the hallway, closing in on Cassian and Melshi's location, and he's taking out every ISB agent in his path along the way, including grabbing Supervisor Hertz at the very end and using him as a shield, which is, I just thought that scene was fantastic. So great, so K2. And then just throwing guys against the walls and smashing their spines into little itty-bitty pieces. Just completely fantastic. And they make their escape, and they get out right before reinforcements can arrive. And they come in. Clea's been wounded from the shock grenade. But they're making their escape from Coruscant. They're heading back to Yavin. But there is concern that they're not who they say they are, because Cassian didn't file a flight plan. They went against orders. 18 different orders they broke to leave, according to K2. And so they're treated as potential enemies. And Draven does quickly dispel all of that, and they get Clea some help. But Alliance High Command does not believe anything that Cassian is telling them about the Emperor's energy project being a front for some kind of super weapon. They don't believe anything about the Kyber crystals, Jedha, Gorman, Scarif. None of this stuff is making sense to them. But we've seen in Rogue One, particularly amongst these senators who are part of the High Council, the Alliance High Command, that they are fuddy-duddies and naysayers and poo-pooers of good intelligence. They don't want to believe. They couldn't believe. And this is the beginning of that. I mean, we're seeing that firsthand. Bail Organa in particular, not buying any of it. And, Cassian tries to remind these people too, because of it's all discounted because it's from Luthen. And he tries to remind them that Luthen was in this fight for a long time, put in a lot more than the fraction that these other people had put in and sacrificed. And it's a powerful moment for Andor. A lot of the great speeches in this show have gone to other characters. But this one, where Andor gets to land to Alliance High Command, is a really good one. Standing up for Luthen and sort of defending this man who he had a complicated relationship too. And he didn't always agree with what Luthen wanted to be done. But, Luthen put all these things in motion, and Cassian can see that. Cassian can see that Luthen got a lot of this stuff off the ground and got a lot of these people organized, and that they wouldn't be on Yavin as a rebel alliance if not for the things that Luthen put into motion and the things he sacrificed for. So I loved Cassian standing up for Luthen. I thought it was fantastic. Again, they finally gave Diego Luna like a really great speech to kind of, Diego's been killing in the show. Don't get me wrong, but he hasn't gotten one of those like great speeches, one of those great monologues just yet. And he gets one here, and it's Mon. It's Mon. Luthen's relationship with Mon comes to the forefront. So she's the one who wants to believe Cassian, but she needs help. So she enlists Vel to talk to Cassian and sort of suss out if this is all believable or not. And this is where this episode sort of downshifts quite a bit. After we leave Coruscant, it becomes a question of believability, of skepticism, and of hope. Do we believe this information from what some would consider a dubious source? Even though Luthen is the guy who, again, almost built this thing, but is considered to be the black sheep of the rebels. It's really great. And then Clea trying to find her role amongst these people and seeing what slice of life we have on Yavin here. It's very fascinating. Meanwhile, on Coruscant, the failure to lock down the leaks have heads rolling at the ISB. We don't know Dedra's fate yet, but Partagaz is about to be taken in. But he opts for another plan, known as suicide. But it's interesting in the moments leading up to his death, because as we cut to Coruscant and the ISB headquarters where Partagaz stands, sort of realizing that his fate is sealed, what do we hear him listening to? But Nemik's speech from the Aldhani episodes of season 1. And sort of the acknowledgement that this speech has gone viral across the galaxy, and it's growing, and they can't contain it, and it's spreading. And so Partagaz is listening to it, and it's sort of, I think it's sort of helping him crystallize his decision here to end his own life, and maybe sort of like the realization that maybe it dawns on him just a little bit that maybe he's on the wrong side of things. Not sure about that, but he definitely knows what's going to happen to him if he goes either into an interrogation chamber or in perhaps an Imperial prison, or perhaps they just kill him themselves. I think this way, again, maybe it's a coward's way out in the minds of some, but I think in Partagaz's mind that it's best to control his own destiny at this point, and it's an interesting choice. But again, Nemik's speech being part of it, I thought was a very interesting callback, and sort of the acknowledgement that this thing is out there in the galaxy, making its way around on their equivalent of the YouTubes, is very interesting, very cool. So ultimately, there's a lot happening here on Yavin in this part of the episode, and between the High Council diminishing what Cassian has to say because they don't trust Luthen, and thinking that he's as paranoid and deluded as Saw Gerrera, who they just had that communication chat with not too long ago, and they all realize that Saw Gerrera is kind of sort of out of his mind. They assumed the same thing about Luthen, even though, as Cassian points out, it was Luthen who sent Cassian to get Mon Mothma off Coruscant after the Senate speech. But they have their doubts. This is who the High Council is. They believe everything's a trap. They believe that Luthen was compromised because the ISB was closing in, so they're worried that he's been flipped, and now he's giving out misinformation to lead everything into a trap, to destroy them and expose them, and all these different things, which sounds very Imperial to me. So I suppose from one perspective, I do totally understand. But Mon wants to believe Cassian. She's gotten into Cassian a bit through their time together, and his connection to Luthen, and she's known Luthen for a long time. She didn't always agree with his methods, but Luthen was there for the fight and got the job done. So she sends Vel, and Vel's very direct and wants Cassian to just lay it out for them that it's true. And there's a fascinating conversation between the two characters where they talk about all that was sacrificed and all that was lost, all that was, all that Luthen had done, and everything that they're trying to do moving forward. Again, it's a great conversation. It's a great a moment for the characters. Clea wakes up. She comes stumbling out into the rain, into the jungle. Vel finds her. They have a great chat. It's just these moments that sort of bring the characters together and shows them that, even though Clea is not in her element any longer, she's amongst friends. She is in a place where she can continue the fight and do some good. Meanwhile, we find out that Tivik, from Cassian's contact from Rogue One, has been contacting them like relentlessly, but he'll only talk to Cassian. He's at Kafrene. We know where that we know what that is. We know where that is. We know where that means. We are leading up to everything. And Tivik, again, on Jedha, like the pieces are starting to fall together. Draven's starting to suspect that maybe this is legitimate. And that's why they send Cassian to the Rings of Kafrene, because this can't be a coincidence. Tivik was with Saw on Jedha. Jedha's now linked to this plot that Luthen's uncovered for the Kyber crystals, not for routing out partisans. So Imperial intelligence is beginning to be suspicious. Mon Mothma believes what Cassian's saying. And then we get a chat between Bail and Cassian, in which Bail decides to take a chance and to lean into hope and give Cassian a chance to prove that this is real, that this is what the threat is, and this is what has to be stopped. And it's a fun moment too, because I think in the last arc we only got tiny glimpses of Benjamin Bratt as Bail Organa. I think in these 3 episodes that we see, well, mostly it's the last 2 episodes that we see him as Bail, I think he really shines. I think he does a nice job standing in. Jimmy Smits is fantastic, and I wish he were there. But I think Benjamin Bratt does a really nice job kind of standing in his boots and setting things up. And he's wearing that cloak that he wore in Rogue One. And I don't know, it looks fantastic. And I love the sequence. And I love what Cassian says to him about how, honestly, you guys probably would have got along a lot better than you think you would have. It's great sequences. It's just really great, fantastic character work yet again on this show. Surprise, surprise. And so now Cassian has the go. And this is where we get to kind of like our closing monologue, not a monologue, excuse me, a closing kind of epilogue, a cutscene of epilogues on our characters. We cut back to, we cut to Will and Drina on Yavin having breakfast, Mon and Vel having coffee in the mess hall. And for some reason, I really like that scene with just Mon Mothma hanging out with the rebels, hanging out with like the technicians and the soldiers and the fuel jockeys, all these things. For some reason I really liked that visual of her just hanging out with everybody. We cut to Coruscant and we see Perrin, Mon's husband, hung over and in the back of a cab or back in of a speeder with Skulden's wife, which is interesting. Oh, and then most surprisingly, most shocking of all, Dead Romero in prison. Is it Narkina 5? It's the same outfits, and the rooms look very similar. So how about that? How crazy is that idea? And then we cut to Krennic, his hair all sharpened up, looking good, overseeing the construction of the Death Star, getting ready for that dish to get installed. And Cassian walking the tarmac, getting ready to head out in the U-Wing. And he sees the Force Healer once again. And then they sort of share a look, a moment, right? And it's the culmination of everything, right? It's the culmination of it all. They're going to Kafrene, Cassian, and K2, and they're going to take the quick way. And they take off, and they fly into the skies, and it feels like that's the end of the show, right? Right? No. We cut back to Minu Rao, the planet we saw them living on in the first arc. And we see our good friend B2 Emo hanging out, having a little droid race. And in the fields, we see Bix walking through the fields, her back to us. She's carrying something. A little baby. She's got a little baby. A little Cassian Andor baby. And it gives us this ending, despite we know what's going to happen to our title character. We know Andor's fate. We know the somber note on which this show technically could end on. But no, they like to give us something else. Bix and her baby, signifying hope in the galaxy. Gorgeous. I loved it. It was fantastic. I couldn't ask for anything better. Of course, the internet has gone crazy, deciding who this baby is in the future. I don't have time for that. I think it's silly. And I hope they're all wrong. So I'm just going to leave it at that. What an amazing series. What an amazing send-off. I can't wait to dive into these episodes a little bit more fully. I hope you guys will indulge me when I get the chance to do that. Because I do really want to get more of the meat off the bone on these episodes. The reaction ones are fun. And this might be the longest one I've been able to do because just so much of it was, I don't know, just right there in my head, so I could just talk about it a little bit fresher. Anyways, 10 out of 10, or 10 buckets. Perfect show. Fantastic. There's a couple of quirks, but I think I've settled on them. I've set my mind at ease on them, and I can't get enough. More shows like this would be great. Will we ever? Probably not. So that's why this will always be like sort of like a gemstone amongst the Star Wars library for giving us such hard-hitting, intense, realistic, grounded content. And again, there's flavors of Star Wars for everyone. Maybe this isn't necessarily your favorite flavor. I don't even know if it's my favorite flavor, but it's a flavor that I like a lot. Give me this flavor when you can. So yeah, 10 buckets of a phenomenal series from start to finish. The performances, the writing, the directing, the costuming, the set design, the production pieces. I mean, all of it. Just what an absolutely just prestige show, right? Like this thing is it's incredible. I don't think it wins a ton of awards, but it should. I mean, it's absolutely mesmerizing, and it's sort of political acuity and acumen is second to none. The things that they're talking about and the things that it's echoing in real life are so scary. It's so scary. I absolutely loved it, friends. I loved it. And with that being said, I think we're going to wrap it up because we are running really, really long. Way longer than I expected us to go tonight. But I thank you guys for indulging me and sticking with me through these kind of rushed recaps of the Andor series. Thank you so much. We'll be back next week for more Star Wars fun. We're probably going to get back into Rebels for a little bit. Let Andor breathe before we dive into the episodes more fully. But I'm going to try to figure out how to do those as sort of like companion pieces to recapping Rebels. We'll see how I can work that out. I got to do some schedule finagling, but we'll see how it goes, friends. So please remember, this is the Mandovision podcast, and I am your host, Nargai Tom. Thank you for checking out our small independent Star Wars show. Reach out to us on the socials, Mando_Vision, Twitter and Instagram, Mandovision at Blue Sky, and you can email me at mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Like, subscribe, follow, and share this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. And if you're on the Apple Podcast, sweet, sweet, sweet 5-star reviews. They help us out so, so much. And we're so glad when you take the time to do it. All right, Bucketheads, thank you so much. Go out there, breed Garrett Star Wars fans. Get them to watch Andor. It might change their lives. It might. All right, we'll be back. Take care, Bucketheads. And remember, this show, this podcast, can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
I find that answer vague and unconvincing.